Hi, my name is Theo, and this is Mira Talks. Here we have conversations with women who turn personal challenges into industry breakthroughs in health, hormone wellness, and advocacy. This podcast is powered by Mira, the hormone health monitor that helps you understand your body and make confident, informed decisions about your health and future. Today, I'm speaking with Karina Vazirova, the woman who launched Europe's first FemTech accelerator in the middle of the pandemic because, in her words, COVID and feminism collided. A former international chess master, she once played with Hikaru Nakamura and won against Garry Kasparov. Today, she's backing over 70 startups that are changing how women everywhere talk about their bodies. Karina, welcome to the pod.
Thank you for such a lovely intro, and thank you for having me. And yeah, so I'm the co-founder and CEO of FemTech Lab, and we started as a startup accelerator, focusing specifically on women's health. So a startup accelerator is kind of like a business school or a program for early stage entrepreneurs that helps them figure out their product propositions, go to markets, how to fundraise. And we focused on specifically helping companies in women's health. And over the course of 5 years, we ran the program 7 times and helped over 70 early stage entrepreneurs in women's health. And today we have a portfolio of just about 60, a little bit over 60 companies that are all doing something incredible in the field of women's health. And my role today is to support them, to stay connected with them, help them raise funding, help them grow further, and continue doing amazing things that they do.
And it's beautiful how you found just a different way to still be active and make a difference in the space of women's health without necessarily developing a product, right? Or being a practitioner in the space. In the past conversations that I had with some of the guests on the show, but also from my previous experience, I've learned that it's usually some kind of a pain that helps us sort of define the passion that we have and then further also shape our careers and the work that we get to do in life. Was that also your case?
I didn't know that it was going to be women's health or femtech, but when during COVID I joined an online panel about, I think, like data privacy in women's health or data privacy in femtech. And I just remember there was, a founder of a femtech company, there was an investor, there was there was all these women that were discussing where the industry was going and how to build in it and how to innovate in it and what challenges are we grappling with, what opportunities there are. And I don't even remember what they were saying, but I was just so blown away by just the energy of that conversation and how, yeah, the leadership that those women had and how intelligent they were and how innovative they were and how they didn't just think about growth, but they also thought about sustainable and ethical challenges in the space. I was immediately pulled into the sector. And even though I had never worked in women's health and femtech was a new space for me, I felt it in my bones that this is what I would like to contribute to. And this is the space that I want to dedicate my career to immediately. I didn't know what I was going to be doing, but I just knew it at the time.
There's a strong sensation in the body that you feel when you have that calling. I recognize that also in myself. There was a moment when I switched careers. I had a big pivot in my life, a big shift in my career path. And if I try to explain what it was, I cannot really perfectly articulate it. It was just like this whole sensation in my whole body, and I felt the pull. It's like a physical pull that you feel that makes you say, this is it. Even though you're maybe not convinced how that next step is going to look like, right? You were also at that point where you were just mapping out what could be the connections. But there is that inspiration, there's that gravitational pull that just sucks you in and tells you this is it.
Yeah, it was very visceral. It was not logical. I felt it. And it's a feeling that I tend to trust.
For everyone listening, could you help us define, first of all, like what is the femtech space? We have so many definitions of the space, of the sector. Just give us the very brief definition of it. What makes a company be part of the femtech space?
The space definitely has continued to define itself and evolve in the last couple of years. But I think the most accepted definition at the moment is that femtech, or women's health, is innovations, so technology companies, it's femtech, so tech companies that address women's health and well-being. And it could be addressing conditions that are specific women's health conditions, so reproductive health, menstrual health, menopause, but it could also be products that address areas of health and well-being where women have unique needs, or where there are sex-specific differences. So, for example, cardiovascular health or brain health. Even though those things, obviously, we need to take care of both men and women, women do show up with different symptoms, might respond differently to treatments. And in general, there's more and more awareness that we need to actually understand better what are the sex differences in health and in both in treatment and diagnosis. So everything that addresses that as well is also within women's health and femtech sector.
Yeah, there's a huge need also in the space of research when it comes to women's health, right? When we know that women were finally introduced in clinical trials only in 1993. When I first learned that year, I was shocked myself because that meant so many things, right? We got so many things about women's health wrong all this time. So there's definitely a need for more development in the area. How did you got to design what it is now, the FemTech Lab? Like what were the first steps? So after you've mapped out those connections between technology and women, what did you do next?
Well, yeah, also once I discovered that there is this space, femtech, and I felt quite strongly a pull to build and contribute to it. And I was toying with an idea of starting a product lab, because at the time I was running a product agency myself. That was my business at the time. I was working with large corporates and was helping build products for them. So I was working with developers and data scientists, and we had a little team. So, naturally I was like, oh, maybe I could do that within the women's health space. And then my really good friend at the time, who's still a good friend of mine and became my co-founder, and she had just sold her company in media, in fintech, called FinTech Times, and was also kind of exploring what to do next, what to work on, what's kind of the next big mission or project to participate in. And I remember we kind of really sat down and started talking about what she wanted to do and this sector, this femtech sector that I discovered. And I got her totally on board and hooked. At first she was like, what is it? Is femtech female founders? I was like, no, this is different. This is all about women's health. This is this massive blue ocean of opportunities, and it's just starting out. It has the potential to become this massive sector, and it needs to be amplified, and it needs to be shown to the world in the whole glory that it is. And she had background in media, so she had really good perspective on in how that happened in fintech. So we went out and surveyed the industry a bit and tried to understand like where's everybody at, and met people that had been working in the space for years and asked them what's missing. And that was incredibly insightful. And for anyone that's, I think, joining a new industry, I highly recommend doing something like that, because we didn't come from, again, health background. We didn't come from a women's health background. We came from lots of skills and lots of experiences. But this was a new industry for us, which in many ways is great because you can be innovative. But I think also it's important to not reinvent the wheel and to learn lessons that people have already learned before you. So we went and did a bit of market research, and everybody said there's activity, people are excited about the space, people are building in the space, but what's missing is for someone to bring everybody together. What's missing is a platform, an ecosystem that gives everyone an opportunity to contribute in a collaborative way. And that was interesting to hear. And for the both of us, we've had experiences in fintech and legal tech, for me, and regulatory tech, which was also this kind of buzzing sector in London at the time. And in all of those spaces, you always had, startup accelerators or hubs, or these spaces that elevate early stage entrepreneurs and help connect them with investors or partners or mentors, just something that brings everybody together, because you're not just coming together for an event or just to talk about the sector, but you're coming together productively, because you're going to come together to help these innovators that are daring to solve these problems and taking these risks to build something meaningful for women's health. We said, okay, this is the product, just like in any other shape or form. It's a product that's missing in this sector, and that's what it seems like people are craving without realizing that that's what they're craving. As soon as we set it up, there was just this response from the industry in terms of people wanted to sign up to become mentors, founders wanted to apply to be part of it, and we were at the time the first, I think definitely in the UK and Europe, startup accelerator that focused specifically on women's health. And it was just absolutely the right time to do it, because we got incredible feedback and people were signing up. And into our very first cohort of companies that we were recruiting to be part of this accelerator, we had an amazing number of applications for, again, doing it for the very first time, which was a testament to the need that existed
Yeah.
in the market for it.
I really love to hear how when you said that you had all these mentors who wanted to join you, so and contribute to the mission.
Yeah.
And I cannot help but like notice how 2020 has been such a pivotal year for so many of us. So many people have changed their lives and their life's trajectory in 2020. Such a great opportunity. I'm so happy that you embarked on it. You really jumped on it. And how was it when, because of course the femtech space was still new, right? So now you are set on a mission to support these startups, right? Also support them with funding, right? Because funding was a big part of what a company was doing. How were back then the interactions with the investors? Because I assume that there was a lot of masculine dominance, right, in the investing world. How were the reactions and how were the investors looking at a possibility of investing in a femtech company?
Maybe that's just the way that I choose to look at it. But I think we had really positive early feedback from male investors as well as female investors. Our investors in FemTech Lab, we had a lot of men that invested in the company that immediately saw the potential of the space, the importance of the space. And we even made a video that we posted on LinkedIn called What Men Think About Femtech, which is very, very cute, very silly. And we basically recruited our friends, different investors that we knew from fintech, and made them record a video of themselves where they would say what they think femtech is.
What do they think?
Yeah, they thought, some were very sweet, some were very serious, some were like, yeah, femtech is there's a lot of unmet needs. It's also a really good investment opportunity because it's exactly the kind of space that you want to invest in. There's a lot of first to market entry potential. There's, it's kind of, a lot of them gave these very, very serious responses. And then at the very end, one of my colleagues and friends from Holland, actually from legal tech, he left a very sweet message and talking about what it means for him as a father of a daughter and what it means for him looking at the future for her and future generations, and kind of left a very sentimental note in it. I thought it was a very endearing video. It went a little bit viral and was a little bit controversial on LinkedIn, but we just wanted to show that men can be part of the conversation and are not to be alienated. But to also answer your question about investors and what investors were saying in early days, honestly, a lot of the conversations we had to start explaining that femtech isn't about female founders, and it's women's health. So just the definition of the space.
I think there's still confusion nowadays. Like, what does femtech really mean?
Yeah, but like you have now, there's an article in Forbes about femtech. It's just
way more exposure.
I'm in an Uber sometimes, and the Uber driver will be like, "Oh, what is it that you do?" And I'll mention femtech, and they will obviously start explaining to me all the gaps in women's health. And I now have very often, I don't know why it's this particular thing, but in Uber that the driver will tell me, "Did you know that women experience heart attacks differently. I'm like, tell me about it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I think it's definitely, the conversation has shifted.
Mhm.
There is still some, like you say, but I think in many industries, there's still often confusion. What do certain terms mean? But I think femtech has definitely, it has come out from something that's new and people don't understand, to something people are placing. But I remember in the early days of FemTech Lab, my co-founder and I would sit sometimes for hours and just on LinkedIn. It was very early LinkedIn days, and just would message investors, like hundreds of messages a day, because we were building out that black book, that sort of core group of investors that would be interested in the space and would be interested in backing early stage companies in the space. Because it's one thing to invest at a company at Series A, which is also really important, kind of funding stage, but you know angel investment and that kind of pre-seed, early seed investment was very important at the time, because the sector was even younger. And to explain to angels and people that are active in venture capital investments that this is a really interesting opportunity, that this isn't a niche sector with kind of mission driven. This is a very interesting investment to pay attention to. And we would sell the space and we would build it up in everyone's eyes. And then when we would host demo days, people would come because of the pre-work that we would do, explaining why the space is so
Mhm.
important and interesting and meaningful, but also an opportunity for both impact and returns. So a lot of the early days work that we did was that convincing. And I think that has shifted. I think now, on all levels, on level of angel investors, but also on level of venture capital investors, but even on the level of institutional capital that invests in funds that then invest in startups. So that kind of level up, there is an understanding that women's health is a very interesting thesis. And not just because of the impact and the potential for impact that it has, but also because of the potential for returns and commercial growth. The sectors within women's health, whether it's menopause or menstrual health or reproductive health or even sexual wellness, all of these sectors in and of themselves are huge. And this realization, I think, is happening, and it definitely wasn't. And in fact, this year, I think, is we're kind of, I can feel it. There is a shift happening where I think it's about to get even bigger, and there's more. Just the kind of conversations I'm having are completely different than 5 years ago, when we were convincing people and getting them on board. And now it feels like people get it. And I've, people that you wouldn't expect would go back and say, "Oh, your women's health is a great thesis." I'm like, "Oh, really?" Yeah, it's a very different time now.
So the future looks a lot brighter
I'm
for the
incredibly
space.
optimistic. Yeah, yeah.
Sounds very similar to a story that, the story of how I was going, back in 2020, asking people around and women around whether they know about the phases of their menstrual
Mm,
cycle. And that was not so long ago. If you think about it, early 2020, that's 6 years ago almost. And I would say out of 20 women, maybe one would know what the luteal phase was. And nowadays, when I host events and I do all my workshops and also in my community and online, when I ask the same question, I get almost 9 out of 10 hands up, which means that there is so much more awareness, first of all, among us women,
mm.
which only tells me that we become even more interested in educating ourselves about our own bodies. But it also means that with that education and awareness, there's going to be even more demand in the new developments, right? In new companies, new innovation, which also proves your thesis that, yes, indeed, it's going to be a very prosperous space in the next few years.
100%. And I think also women's health is such an interesting, multidimensional space, in a sense that I think it's so much bigger than just health, and the sort of forces that push it forward and drive it to grow and drive more creativity, innovation in the space aren't just about health. They're also where about the cultural shifts that women are experiencing, how we're thinking about our reproductive health, how we're thinking about our mental health, and the cultural conversations and evolution that women are going through, I think then impacts the women's health space as well, because of what, yeah, consumers, like you say, are starting to ask for and be ready for. And I think it's also from policy perspective, there's more and more awareness of how not taking care of women's health impacts economies. And that's starting to become kind of more, there's more awareness and understanding of that, I feel like, now. So as a result, you have government funding and grants and kind of capital and that sort of force coming in, which also contributes to more growth in the space, because if you have government grants and funding, you have more entrepreneurs that can apply for that and
Sure.
sustain their businesses for longer and invest in research and development. So I guess what I'm trying to get at is that it's just the women are evolving, we are evolving. So I think in quite profound ways right now, and what it means to feel empowered is evolving. And so much of it goes back to our body and our health, and how we then show up, and how healthy we are, and are we healthy enough to show up and participate and lead and be creative. So all of it contributes back into the space, growing and maturing and evolving and having new needs that consumers are ready for and entrepreneurs are inspired to build, which is why I'm so excited about it. It's just there's so much in it to think about, to innovate within. It's health, but it's also a bit philosophical, it's social, it's cultural, it's everything. And I find it endlessly interesting and fascinating
I
as
see
well.
it in you when you talk
Yeah.
when you talk about it. Your whole face just lightens up. Your eyes just spark. Like, this is it. This
I
is
love
the
it.
mission. Can you maybe think of some of the products, some of the startups, some of the innovations that you came across while working with so many founders and so many innovators and creators? Can you maybe cherry pick some of these ideas that you thought were really innovative? Something that you wouldn't have imagined was possible to be built maybe 15, 20 years ago.
In general, I don't pick favorites in the FemTech Labs portfolio. So I don't do that. But I will give examples, but I would also say that I think what often like inspires me, I was actually looking at our portfolio of companies the other day, is on one hand, the diversity of it, because just women's health, there's so many subtopics within it, and there's companies that are solving fertility, reproductive health challenges. There's companies that are solving something in menstrual health or gynecological health. For example, one of our recent graduates is getting ready to launch a tampon that helps prevent BV and yeast infections by taking care of the vaginal microbiome because of the special ingredients that the
Oh,
tampon has.
wow.
And the founder is going through clinical trials at the moment before launching to market. So there's things like that. But then there's also, I was looking at our portfolio recently, and it's always really hard for me to pick favorites. I can't pick favorites. But just it's also because what's fascinating and inspiring to me, and what I'm really proud of, is actually the diversity of companies that we've worked with. Because we've worked with companies that would be building within spaces of women's health that maybe, I wouldn't say that are kind of traditional, but you would think of women's health like hormone health or menstrual
Sure.
health or reproductive health. But we've also worked with companies that kind of push the edges of the sector definition a little bit, you could say. We've worked with, for example, um, a female founder. It was a mixed team. Their product is a at-home sperm test for men. So you could ask, why is that company in a FemTech Lab women's health portfolio? And the vision there was that if you bring men into the fertility and reproductive health conversation, you remove the burden from women. So it does contribute to women's health and
Oh,
well-being.
interesting.
So
I
we
wouldn't
were
have
like,
thought that. Yeah, it would
yeah.
also be part of the same sector.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, we weren't trying to be super super strict
Hmm.
and draw strict boundaries, because the sector is evolving and maturing. We would kind of push the boundaries a bit. Another really interesting company that taught me a lot was a sexual wellness company, these two girls from Italy, and they've designed a strap-on for women in same-sex relationships. And they taught all of us the fascinating fact, that even though women actually are the top users of sex toys, most of the sex toys are designed by men. And they've actually created a strap on that women loved using, and they had incredible feedback. And it's something I hadn't known before, but it just gave me, again, such an interesting perspective on all the use cases and the problems you can solve in the space. But also, what I loved is, and really love, is how international the space is. So we worked with companies in the UK and Europe and US, but I'm also always very inspired working with founders in emerging markets, and because it's a completely different ballgame, and the way that the opportunities we have to build companies in the West, whether it's, how simple it is to set up a company, how there are tax incentives for investors to invest, and if you're building a product, how, working with retailers, there's certain kind of the pipeline of the business is walked, and there's a lot of things that are figured
Mhm.
out. How do you make payments, how do you do logistics? Like, a lot of it is solved. If you're going back to emerging markets, a lot of these very basic business challenges you have to figure out and reinvent from scratch. So I always have a lot of respect and admiration for founders that are building something in women's health in Africa, in Asia, and Latin America. We had one entrepreneur, Kidis from Yene Health in Ethiopia, who she studied in the US, and then she went back home to Ethiopia, and she was passionate about elevating the economy of her home country and contributing to the growth of her country. And after thinking about it, her realization was that one of the most effective ways to do that was through women and through solving women's health. And she started building a women's health platform there. And just the the force of nature that she is, and how much she has to do to make it happen, and how many stakeholders she is bringing to the table, and to advocate, and to build the business there, is incredibly inspiring. So that's also something that always motivates me, not even just the topics, but
Mhm.
also the global diversity of founders. And just to know that, as we're having this conversation, there's women everywhere building in women's health, and we're all kind of connected by this mission, but are all participating in it individually. That also, for me, like, really warms my heart, and makes me like feel like I'm part of something, not just what I'm doing, but part of something bigger that everyone else is contributing to, if that makes
I
sense.
see that. Yeah, no, absolutely. Because you found that unique way to make a difference in the space and help the space accelerate its growth with the company that you've built. You successfully made the jump. So I wonder now, where are you going to take your craft? How are you going to master your craft moving forward? Where are you taking FemTech Lab?
Well, I think when we started FemTech Lab 5 years ago, like we talked about a bit today, the sector was new. It needed more amplification, and it needed more bringing people together, and it needed more fire. I think that's what we largely did, and very proud of that. I think moving forward, this feels like, I wonder how this is going to age, but it feels like a very pivotal moment in femtech and women's health. It just does. I don't know. I don't think I'm imagining it because I want just to see it, but I really feel like we are going to see more investment and more interest in the space. But it's important not to lose that momentum. And so I think for me, what I feel is really productive to focus on now is organizing capital towards women's health. I think we now have a much more mature space. There's different kind of categories of businesses, different stages. There's more awareness around what it takes to build a meaningful, useful product in the space. There's more maturity around, what some of the consumer trends that have been happening in women's health. There's just more maturity in the space, both from how propositions are formed, but also how companies are taken to market, and what sort of business models are starting to work. There's still a lot to figure out, but it's maturing. So I think now is a really good time to bring more investment into the space. So that's what I'm focusing on next. And actually, I recently partnered with a fund called Borski. They're based here in Amsterdam, but they're very international. And one of their key investment verticals is women's health. And they invest from Series A and further, so a bit more late stage than FemTech Lab was. But I'm now trying to kind of my mission now is to figure out how can we attract more capital to the space at all stages, early, Series A and plus, and understand really what are those opportunities. Is it government funding? Is it foundations? Is it funds? Is it private investment? And find a way to attract more of it in a productive way into women's health.
And in terms of markets, do you have any like a new focus, or are you aiming to continue doing the work internationally? You mentioned also the emerging markets, but I'm wondering if you have any focus.
Global, always. I think it's important to have like a global mindset, but UK and Europe is home. And I think UK and Europe actually, there's a lot of opportunities. There's a lot of growth. There's from both kind of public policy perspective. UK has been, I think, doing a lot to invest in women's health in different ways, and to amplify and to raise awareness, and to also invest in female founders. So there's some movement there.
Mhm.
And London is just such a tech hub. There's so much talent in London. There's so much creativity, so much ideas. So I think UK will continue being a very interesting base for women's health, but also Europe. Europe is having a bit of an identity moment, figuring out how I think Europe is going to fit in the tech and venture ecosystem globally, how it's going to stay competitive. And Amsterdam, I think, is a really interesting hub in particular for AI. There's quite a few interesting companies that are now headquartered here. So I like having a global view. I think there's always something different and opportunities in different geographies, whether it's an emerging market or Asia or US, of course, or Europe or UK. But I think for us, definitely home is UK and Europe, and also
Makes sense.
to mention the universities and the amazing scientific sort of pillar and base that we have here. That also I think is a breeding ground
Mhm.
for new
More
discoveries,
innovation.
interesting IP, and more innovation. Yeah.
I mean, it sounds that you already had a very busy schedule over the past few years, but I also know that you somehow managed to find the time to create a podcast next to it all, right?
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about the podcast.
So the podcast, yes. About 2 years ago, I started producing Mother. So Mother is a podcast, and yeah, how do I introduce this? It was very, very close to my heart. This
Why did you choose the name Mother?
because so what was happening at the time is we at FemTech Lab we were producing this conference called Decoding the Future of Women.
Mhm.
During London Tech Week, we had over 600 people attend, and it was this cosmic explosion. Like we wanted to create an anti-conference, like something that again would just demonstrate what the sector can be and highlight the most cutting edge, the most interesting innovations in the space, and just get people to imagine. And that was very much the creative ethos for the event and what was happening very much at FemTech Lab for me. There were so many topics within that I was just so hungry to dive into deeper. And those were topics like ovarian longevity. Those were topics like pleasure and sexuality and discovering how that relates to other aspects of our health and well-being, reproductive health, of course, and what were some of the most, interesting, innovative solutions there. How does stress and mental health affect our body? Like there were some of these big concepts and topics that I just really wanted to explore, and I wanted to highlight, I think, that again there's women researching and building just incredible things all over the world. And I wanted to create a platform to bring all of that together, but also to learn. And the reason I called it Mother Well, actually, now that we've had this entire conversation, I could say that it was because of my mother, but it wasn't. It was it was more just, I think the word mother is incredibly potent and powerful. And for me, it was more to the creative force that is inside all of us, not just women and men. The creative force to mother something, to create it from nothing, to nurture it into
Mhm.
life, and to grow it further. And it could be a company, it could be a community, it could be a child, it could be a product, it could be an event. It's just that force that I think that exists in everyone, and definitely exists in women, and we can express it in so many different ways. So that was kind of my creative philosophical inspiration for it. And then I had this Rolodex of scientists and entrepreneurs that I was just dying to have interviews with. And we were so busy at FemTech Lab. We were producing this event. We had Accelerator running at the same time. It couldn't have been a worse time to start a new project. But
It's
I
a lot of
just,
work to start
so
a
much,
podcast.
you know.
It's wow, I can only imagine, like, how do
Mm.
you find the time to prioritize such a project?
I couldn't not, I can't describe it, but I just couldn't not do it. It was, like if you have maybe also it relates to your question about taking a leap into entrepreneurship or something else. I always just felt like I don't, it's just, you just have all this energy. Like I had the idea, and then the creative buzz inside of me that
Mhm.
I couldn't just keep in. I had to actually execute and like
Give birth to
give
that
birth,
idea.
exactly.
Mhm.
And so that it just didn't really feel like an option. I had so much energy for it. And again, it was learning how to produce a podcast. Like, what kind of microphone do you get? What kind of soundproofing do you need? What is the teaser supposed to be? Do you need to have music in the beginning? Like, all these things was a massive learning curve. And I was completely obsessed with figuring it all out and learning about it. And it was such a cool experience. But it was definitely to amplify, I think, the interesting research and science that's happening in women's health, and that really pushes our boundaries a bit from understanding what we understand today into something that makes you think, huh, wow. For example, ovarian longevity was a massive part of the podcast. And it's exploring this, I think now is as an emerging new field of research, trying to understand what's going on in our ovaries. What are some of the fundamental biological processes that are happening there? How do our ovaries impact everything else in our body? Why do they age faster than every other organ in our body? What happens during menopause? And maybe, towards the end of third season, kind of discovering that maybe menopause is about to be completely reframed as a concept altogether. Maybe we're growing out of that, even as a as so I think it's really pushing boundaries of things and bringing
Mhm.
in people that are at the frontier of some of these topics, but also explored the psychedelics and the potential of psychedelic therapy in general, but also in relation to women's health. That was another massive topic on the show. I've had at least, I think, 3 or 4 episodes on that, and connecting that to mental health and stress, and discovering how stress impacts our body and what patterns stress can
I've
create
listened to some
later.
of these
Yeah.
conversations on your podcast. You're
Yeah.
a great interviewer as well as
Oh,
a
stop. You're
speaker. Listen to the Mother podcast. Go give it a search. There are some wonderful conversations out there that I think you should listen to if you're into, yeah, learning more about women's health from different angles and different perspectives. There are really many, many nuggets of wisdom in there. So
Thank
totally
you.
recommend your podcast. Beautiful show.
Thank you. Thank you.
To wrap it up, we do have a little tradition that we do here. We are asking some fire questions at the very
Okay.
end to all our guests.
Hit me.
Because I'm curious. Well, first of all, you've been exposed to so much development and innovation in the space of women's health. So these questions are going to be very personal, just to see how you experienced just women's health in general back then and now. We're going to
Okay.
do like a bit of a comparison. The first question goes like this: what do you wish someone told you about your body at the age of 18?
I think at the age of 18, I was just I was just learning how to take care of my body at the time. I think I was just starting to eat healthy and exercise, and I think I had acne, and I was about to go on birth control to control it. So yeah, it was a bit of a it was a tough time for me in terms of finding a connection with my body. And I don't know if there's anything. I know that I will. There was like a beginning of a journey, and I was on the right track. So maybe I would just tell myself that you'll get there. Just you're on the right track. Maybe that's what I would say.
Have the patience. You're going to get
Mm.
there. Tell us a moment when sex ed didn't prepare you for the real life.
Oh my God. I don't even think I had like proper sex education. Like, my mom, we did not have this conversation at home. And at school, I don't actually have any memories of sex ed. I might have missed it. I have no memories. Learning about female pleasure is probably something I wish, just as a concept, was introduced to me. I realize it's, yeah, I don't know what's the right way to do sex education, but I think yeah, I wish it was more. It took me a while to figure out what that even means, and that it's important, and that you're entitled to it, and that it, not just that, but also that it's such a fascinating, yeah, self journey. So I do. I wish I got on that earlier than I did.
So many more orgasms, right?
Yes,
With
exactly.
more enjoyment.
Exactly.
What was your personal aha moment that shaped the work that you're doing today?
A lot, because I'm like an aha moment junkie. So I'm always like reading a book or listening to a podcast and trying to. I spend a lot of time thinking about things. So I do chase aha moments. But actually, I did a. I went on a psychedelic retreat a year ago. It was legalized, so all good. And it was a women's only psychedelic retreat called the Reconnection. It was beautiful. And it's not to sort of, what I'm going to say is not to advertise doing psychedelics. I think everybody has to be really careful. I have to do this disclaimer. I think it's important. And I did it in a space that was really supervised with someone who was very experienced and did psychedelic treatment during clinical trials. So it's very important to do these kind of things responsibly. Um, but it was an all women retreat, and at the end of the journey, when everything was kind of wearing out, a very intense journey, there was a musician that came in to play music. There was two women playing music and singing songs, and it was just one of the most beautiful moments I've ever experienced. And I remember looking around at all these other women that had just been through this intense couple of hours, and we've all shared it together, and everyone had a bit of a different was in a different state, but everybody was sitting around in a circle, and I had this, yeah, this kind of visual. I don't know how to describe it, but I could see every woman that I would look at, I could see another woman's face. Like I saw my mother in somebody next to me, and then I saw um this, like a female entrepreneur that I know in one of the facilitators. And, your brain is in an interesting state. And I just kind of saw women in each other. And I had this just beautiful feeling that, women are sacred. Everyone is. But I just felt that very strongly in the moment. And I felt so connected to the women around me. But I also felt very connected to the fact that, going back to the aha moment, that just as women, we go through so many similar experiences in life. Of course, every journey is different, but we have so many experiences that are shared amongst all of us. I think that's beautiful. That was kind of what inspires me in many
Mhm.
ways. And I think that our relationship with our body and our health, and a lot of these moments in life that we share, are also health moments, whether it's pregnancy or menopause, or, the way that we experience sexual pleasure, or like they do relate back to our health. Yeah, that is quite special to me, because it's not just about health. It's also about our experiences that we share with each other. If you're next to a woman, you're never alone, and that's how I felt. And that for me was kind of a, maybe not an intellectual aha moment, but more of a
Like a somatic one.
Yeah. Yeah. Is it okay that I talked about psychedelics or just
That was perfect.
Yeah.
I think we're gonna keep it in. It was legal. You mentioned it.
Okay.
Like you made sure that to add a disclaimer.
Yeah. I think it was legal.
We only have 2 more questions. What myth or stigma do you most wish you could erase for good?
Yeah, in women's health, kind of objectively, I know that a lot of companies do struggle with digital marketing and advertising their products on social media platforms because certain stigmas and taboos exist around female biology. And you can have ads for erectile dysfunction products, coasting through the internet, no issues. But, if we're talking about anything related to women's health,
it has to be coded.
Yeah, and I think it's in general something that we need to kind of evolve through. It's not just the platforms. I think that stigma exists for people that are scrolling as well, which is I think the platforms in a way are a reflection of. So, but every entrepreneur that educates the consumers about different aspects of women's health and finds ways to bring people on boards and open up the conversation about it, I think is pushing through. I think it's happening, which is why I struggle to answer, because I think it's happening. It's going to happen. People are working toward it.
This was wonderful, Karina. Thank you so much again for your time, for being an inspiration for us all, and for all the work that you do in the FemTech space.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be part of this series. You have some incredible women lined up, and thank you for such thoughtful questions that really made me reflect on why I do what I do. And it's always a joy to do that.
This was Mira Talks. Subscribe on YouTube or wherever you're listening to podcasts. If this episode spoke to you, don't keep it to yourself. Tap the likes, hearts, and stars, and most importantly, hit share. Send it to a friend, drop it in your group chat, or post it in your stories. Every share helps more women learn about their bodies and live their lives free from the limits of shame. Check out our website, miracare.com, for tools, helpful articles, and free ebooks. And use the code ListenToMira for a special discount. And don't forget to follow us on social media for more.